This is my presentation for EDL 856, Summer 2014, Chapter 3, Understanding My Community. The community where I will be teaching this fall is Ganado, Arizona, and it's located on the Navajo Nation. Um, as far as customs and traditions, primarily the main tradition is the Navajo tradition. The majority of people on the reservation and in Ganado are Navajo. But there's a lot of diversity among them in terms of what they do for their living, their education level, their religious beliefs, and how they live their lives. I would say the primary thing that unites them all is a sense of a family and a community. The way it's set up, there are towns on the reservation. Ganado is a little over 1,000 in terms of population. But that town serves a variety of communities. They're dispersed throughout the countryside. Most tribal members live out in the country with their families. Although they're in the cities, there are government housing that create little towns or villages. In terms of population diversity, 90% of the town is Navajo, with a few other Native American groups thrown in there. Less than 1% is non-native. The primary challenge for the Ganado community and the Navajo Nation in general is to create some positive changes on the reservation, while at the same time preserving their Navajo traditions and keeping that Navajo identity. The thing that has going for it is the Navajos are well known for being self-reliant and really being a leader in tribal sovereignty. For example, they're the first tribe to create a tribally run community college, and they value hard work and making good lives for themselves. Just some general population characteristics. The Navajo Nation itself is about 180,000. That's on the reservation. Navajos altogether are probably over 250,000. Ganado itself is about 1,200 people. The median age for the reservation is 24. Ganado is a little bit higher, almost 30. As you can see here, the Ganado household income is the average. The median is a little bit higher, substantially higher than for the reservation in general. And you can see why the unemployment rate in Ganado is actually lower than the 42% for the tribe in general. That being said, this statistic here, 43% living below the poverty rate, is accurate for Ganado. I venture it's very, very close to that. Education attainment here, this is for the tribe. 56% have a high school degree, while only 7% have a college degree. And I would venture to say that Ganado is similar to that as well. In terms of communication, there's really two primary ways that the district and really everybody on the reservation get their news. That's the local radio station and then the weekly newspaper. KTNN is the radio station out of the capital in Winter Rock, and they broadcast in Navajo and English. All the local announcements, school district closings, happenings at the schools is all broadcast here. The other source of news or communication channel on the reservation is the Navajo Times. It's the weekly newspaper that everyone reads. It really is the source for everything that's going on in the Navajo Nation. And the reservation is bilingual with Navajo and English. With many of the people, their first language being Navajo, and English is a second language. Now that is changing, but there are still many people that their primary language is Navajo. In terms of community groups that as an administrator you have to deal with in the community, there's really not a whole lot. There are different parent organizations, booster clubs. There's a parent action committee that works with the school, kind of a side council thing. And there are groups in the community, but they're mostly focused on what their interest is. For example, raising sheep or religious groups, but they're not real influential in terms of the schools. What is a big influence on the schools are the different governmental groups that are involved in education. We have federal groups that are involved, state groups. There's a tribal Navajo Nation education department that the schools have to work with, and then local. The Unified School District has its own foundations of learning. And just for example, I was talking to one teacher, and she says she has to reference 3 different standards in her lesson plans. So primarily it's government groups that influence the schools. Now there are some informal groups that do influence the district and can cause problems. They mainly consist of different parent groups that usually rally around a cause. Athletics, district policies, things like that. These different factions will get together and try to influence policy, and these are the ones that really influence the district more than anything else, anything besides the government groups. The leadership in the communities is really based on politics and relationships. These groups that I mentioned before, they usually, the informal groups that get together, they usually are based on support of a local political leader, a council delegate, maybe a state representative, a grazing committee person, chapter officials. These people are the ones that hold the power, and they can organize groups, and they're really the ones that are the leaders in the community. Teachers and administrators really don't have very much power in the district. There's such a high turnover, and none of them really last very long. The teacher union doesn't really have much power as well. So the leaders in the community, they're the ones that wield the power. A lot of times they're on the school board. A lot of times they're just local families that other community members respect or fear or owe favors to for whatever reason. It really is small town politics at its finest. In terms of the leaders' characteristics, it's really, as I mentioned, small town politics. It's who you know. What have you done for me lately? Do I owe you a favor? And family histories are very, very important in this. There are families in the area that have been there for a long time, and they are well known for people in their family being leaders or looked up to, and that power continues down through the generations. And it's not all negative. I kind of make it sound negative, but it can be good. There are a lot of the leaders that are in it for the right reasons, but there's also a lot that are just in it for themselves, for political gain or monetary gain. And they both are powerful. And I think as an administrator, the standard 5 really applies here. It would be really important as an administrator to model, ethics and fairness and integrity, and promoting the success of all students, to show people and students in the community, how decisions should be made. Economic conditions are a huge factor on the reservation. It's a very high unemployment rate, and many of the parents that do work, work off the reservations. A lot of the kids are living with their grandparents or their mom, while their mom and dad or their father work off the reservation and come back on the weekends or whenever they can. Those that are employed by the school or government agency, either a tribal, state, or county agency. Very, very little private enterprise on the reservation. Also a big factor in terms of money and economics is the fact that the school is located on federal property, so there is no property tax base to raise money for the schools. Because of that, almost all the money the schools receive come from the federal or state funds. And I thought another standard that really applied here, that as an administrator you really have to, really promote, is standard 6, advocacy for all students in terms of legal, political, and economic context. I left off the social and cultural here. That's a big part of the teaching on a reservation. But I really think as an administrator on a reservation, you have to advocate for your students, legally and politically, and just try to find money, write grants, talk to politicians, talk to people that can influence policy, because all that money comes from government agencies for the most part, and whatever else money you do get is going to come from, groups that you approach and programs that you pursue. So that's a huge part of being an administrator out there. Political structure. The area is not very political. It's very political in terms of local politics, but not so much in national politics. They just don't have the voting block power that other groups have. That being said, local politics is very, very important. And again, those tend to be the leaders. And it tends to be based on, what have you done for me lately? You're doing what I want. Not so much what's good for the good of all. And just a tidbit here, they do tend to vote Democratic. And I'm not exactly sure why that is. In terms of social issues, they're probably more conservative, but they do tend to vote Democrat. In terms of social tensions in the community, you would think that race would be a huge one because it's on an Indian reservation, but it really isn't. Almost the entire population there is Native American. You do have some non-natives, working in the schools or in the hospitals or some local government agencies, but they're very much in the minority. So any race does come up, but it's usually, it's usually something serious where, a non-Navajo is racist, or the non-Navajo feels uncomfortable being the minority. I'd say it's always present, it's in the background, but it's really not an issue. At least it hasn't been in my experience, I really haven't seen it. Gang activity is low. There are some wannabe gangs, and there's some little activity in certain areas, but it's pretty much unorganized, and it's not overwhelming yet, and hopefully it stays that way. What are some serious social problems are, all the things associated with poverty and low SES. There is crime. It tends to be petty crime, or crimes when people are drunk or under the influence of drugs. Drugs is a big problem. Alcoholism is a huge problem, and then just healthcare, health problems. Almost every family out there has been touched by alcoholism and diabetes and issues like that. Religious groups can create a few social tensions. The majority, if you look up on the city data, I'll tell you that, break it down by the Christian religions, but most people out there tend to be, have their traditional Navajo beliefs. There is another small percentage that are Native